The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, just please take your seat above us. We'll let you in to prepare for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride on this Thursday night, March 16th, Friday, March 17th. Get your green on if you are on the East Coast. We're live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North, as we are live 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio. If you like our music, you can thank Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot rocks us out in and out of every single show, as he is the official sound of SOR. Hey, if you're a social media junkie like I am, you can follow us on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And of course, our website is SpacedOutRadio.com. And if you go to Patreon.com, we have some really cool offers on there for you as well if you want to become one of our Spaced Out Radio patrons. You want to take part in this show? No problem, but we don't take phone calls. What we do is we load up the chat rooms. We got a plethora of guests in each chat room. We got 5 of them. You got to sign in to Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, Facebook on the SOR Space Travelers Club, or go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the Listen Live button, head on into the chat room. You can sign up there for free as well. Or if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio, where I can chat with you and take your questions in there live during the show. If you head to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. We got some really cool swag we want to give away every single month. On our website, we have the Encounter Online, our brand new news section by our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. Check out my latest blog there as well. And if you've had a sighting that you just can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is ready to find out what's going on with you. We love being live on WQEE 99 Rock the Key way down in Noonan, Georgia, where they film The Walking Dead. We are also live in Sin City. Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. The United Public Radio Network plays us live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Tonight on SOR, we take a different direction into the land of conspiracy. You know, we've had people on this show before discuss how the entertainment world is infiltrated by some sort of government program. Yes, it sounds hokey, sometimes truly unbelievable. However, what if there was some truth to that? You see, tonight, we introduce you to one of our newest monthly guests on this program. Out of Las Vegas, Jamie Sexton, who is creating Rebel Planet News, a new and up-and-coming hard-hitting alternative journalism website, has been involved in the music and entertainment industry for the last 25 years. From rock music and living in Hollywood, Jamie's list of friends include the famous to the infamous. It's awarded him with some unique and interesting stories that seem right out of sci-fi or a good Tom Clancy novel. Jamie has lived a life that most of us could really only truly dream of. But life in the fast lane comes with intriguing information, from government cover-ups to the depths of man's darkest secrets. He's been told information from movie stars, rock stars, military men, government officials, and even Masons about the truth behind mainstream curtains. RebelPlanetNews.com is Jamie's website that should be functional by May or June, but we're getting it going tonight, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Jamie Sexton, welcome to Spaced Out Radio, buddy. How are you doing?
Pretty good, Dave. How are you doing, buddy?
I am doing great, and I do have to let the public know, because I am full disclosure here. You and I are, we're pretty good friends. We've gone to Guns N' Roses together down in Vegas during their days of playing at the Hard Rock Hotel. We chat quite a bit. We're both into the same type of topics, so I'm very proud to have you finally get on this show, so that way we can actually get into some of the topics that you and I have actually discussed on the phone for hours upon end.
Yeah, I agree. Should be fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be an absolute blast to have you on tonight. So, because we're introducing you as a new monthly feature on this show, and you will be on every month, the third Thursday of every month, which we really do appreciate you taking the time, because I know building Rebel Planet News takes a lot of your time up these days. But let's focus on you. Let's introduce you to our audience, my friend. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get involved with this life in the fast lane? Because nobody really plans to have the type of life you've had.
Well, it's had its ups and downs, that's for sure. But, most of it was circumstantial. I started playing music at a young age, right out of high school, and really never looked back. In and out of bands my whole life, just kind of living out of bags and traveling and jumping from city to city, with no... I always have my family in Texas and my roots there, but, I've always wanted to get around and just see things, and living that way, you're exposed to things that most people who are in the 9-to-5 grind just don't see. And when you play music for a living and you're up all night and, in big cities at big parties, and, you're exposed to things that probably the average bear doesn't see. So, my interests have always been a little bit outside the lines. I've colored a little bit outside the lines. But I never really got into drugs. I wasn't that guy. So I always kept my eyes open. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a wild ride. From Texas to Hollywood to New York to Vegas. I've been out here in Vegas now probably close to 12 years now in Vegas for the most part. So it's been a good time, man.
And is that the life, Jamie? Is that the life you planned, to live that life in the rock star fast lane? Because I don't mean to name drop here, but I'm going to do it for our audience. You were very good friends with the late Janie, the lead singer of Warrant. Vinnie Paul is one of your best friends, the drummer from Pantera. His brother Dimebag Darrell was tragically killed back in 2004 during a concert. You're buddies with DJ Ashba from formerly of Guns N' Roses, now 6am, the guys from Five Finger Death Punch. You're really highly involved in the music scene. And we haven't even gone into the famous people in Hollywood that you have not only partied with, but got to know on a personal, intimate level. Did you ever see yourself getting involved with people of fame that everyday people would basically look or put on a pedestal?
Well, I don't think I ever really considered it in those terms. It's nothing you plan on. Most of it's just circumstantial. If like I said earlier, if you keep those hours and you do that job and you're around that thing, you'll run into people, because people are just people, and they like to talk, they like to hang out. Most entertainers that I've known in my life are actually very, very down-to-earth people. The job that they do on stage or, their public persona is one thing, but most of them are very grounded, good people. And, when you know them on a different level, you see them at the grocery store or have dinner with them at home or, whatever. You don't really see them in the same way that probably the public does. So for me, it's just kind of second nature at this point. And I'm not an idol worshiper or anything like that. I just, I appreciate talent, no matter what kind of talent it is. And but no, I never really saw it going that way. I always wanted to do more with my music career. I remember when I was younger, my mom is a doctor, and she's in the sociology side field. And I remember her asking me one day when I was young. She said, I was in my room daydreaming, I guess, playing with a couple of drumsticks, tapping on my bed there. And she walks in and says, have you ever considered what you might want to do when you get older, when you grow up? And I don't know, I think maybe I was 8 or 9. And I said, I don't know, Mom, maybe be a doctor like you or something like that. And I don't know why I even gave that answer. And she looked at the big chip poster on the wall. She goes, oh, well, I thought maybe you'd want to do something like those guys do. And I said, well, yeah, but I want to make a lot of money. And she goes, she laughed and said, well, those guys probably make more money in one day than I make in a whole year. So for me, that was like, oh, okay, that's what I want to do. So I tried my best to do that. But, you know, living as a musician, it doesn't always end up that glitz and glamorous. You know, you end up working a lot harder than you planned on, and not everybody gets the brass ring. But it's been a lot of fun, and I don't think I would have changed anything. So that's where we're at now.
Jamie, I don't know if you have us on speaker or not, but if I could get you to move a little bit closer to your mic, because you're sounding just a tad muffled for our audience, that would be wonderful. Yeah. Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. So, living this lifestyle and hanging with people who, you know, they're ordinary guys or ladies that you get to meet, you know, you get invited to the parties, behind the backstage, behind the concerts, and everything along those lines. And people talk, and you see them in such a natural environment. And it's so different compared to, you know, what we see on TV and music videos or up on stage during the concert. You know, I've only been backstage once, and that was in Vancouver with Bumblefoot. You know, and it was really surreal to be hanging out in his tour bus and, you know, trying his hot sauce and you know, just watching him play a private concert for us afterwards on guitar. You know, yeah. And it's hard to believe, you know, that stigma of seeing them on the stage, you know, just because they're elevated 5-6 feet up doesn't mean that that's the way they are when they are behind the scenes. So did it take you a while to get over that shell shock of being around famous people, or was it just so natural in the environment you created for yourself that it was just like nothing? It was just like putting butter on toast kind of thing and just easy.
Yeah, honestly, I think I outgrew any sense of being starstruck at a very early age. Just being around people in their natural habitats, you know, outside of, you know, the scene. So yeah, I'm still starstruck with certain people to some degree, you know, that I probably idolized when I was younger. It's interesting to be around and realize that they're a real person, and you know, you still have a little bit of that. But for the most part, no, I think I've just seen a little too much and been too close to certain things to really look at it in that context. I don't really, you know, I'm going to tell you one thing, though, is whatever they do for a living sure beats digging ditches, I'll tell you that. So it is exciting, you know, when you're around that environment and everybody's having a good time, because most of the time when you're if someone's not at home with their significant other, meaning entertainers or whatever, then they're generally in an environment where they're having a few drinks or a few laughs, and so everybody's out. But it's not, for me, it's not that much different than on the average than just going out with your buddies and having a good time. You know, like I said earlier, they're people too, you know, and so. It's probably not as glamorous as most people think it is off the clock, so to speak.
Are people of celebrity status, are they trustworthy of people, or is it a part of being part of that small core where, you know, that's where they kind of keep their hidden secrets. That's where they keep their private lives. Because, you know, if you look at someone like Axl Rose, whom you know very well, or you look at someone like Nikki Sixx from 6am and Motley Crue fame, I mean, those are people who they're polar opposites. Nikki Sixx went very public with his heroin diaries and what he went through in a tough time in his life, but you take somebody like Axl, who is very private. And the reason why I bring up those two is a lot of people, and what I've seen in in famous people I've been around, they have a core group around them, and you don't stray from that core group because they are the people who help you get through every day, because the lifestyle, it's not easy being famous. It's not easy being someone that everybody has this imagination on because they've seen you on the rock stage or they've seen you on camera in a video or a movie.
Right.
You know. So is it really difficult, or is there any type of pressure to try and stay in that core, Jamie, because you want these people to continue to trust you? And I can't see a lot of trust if you're famous.
Yeah, obviously I can't speak for individuals in that regard. But what I've witnessed is that celebrities in that sense probably do have a lot more. They probably do have a lot more at stake as far as who to trust. At least in the sense of, are you really my friend, or are you just trying to be in my proximity because of who I am? There's a whole lot of that. We refer our group, my friends, especially in the rock scene, we have nicknames, various nicknames for those types of people. One of those nicknames is Strap, if you're a strap, because people like to strap up to the posse, strap up to the party and hang out, and who knows what they want. Maybe they want to hang out with somebody famous because they think that if they do that some of that might rub off on them, or some of the notoriety, or, they might get some attention from someone. So there's a lot of that, and I have witnessed that, and I think that, but most celebrities, especially if they've been doing it for a while, they can identify that a million miles away. And at the very least, they keep accounting of it. They know they generally are they develop sort of a sense of who's around them and for what reason. So I think it is something that most people are aware of, and but they're like, again, like you, Dave. I'm sure you have your group of friends that if you go out with and you trust. So in some respects, that's not really all that foreign. I think it's just, for them, they're going to attract a lot more people trying to get into their circles, a lot more strangers. And, if you're talking about someone who travels a lot, like musicians, they probably encounter, hundreds of people within, if not thousands, within any given week, especially if they're out on tour, trying to get their attention. Hey, can we hang out? This, that, and the other thing. So it is a little bit surreal for them, and I think they do have to put up certain guards, and especially in their inner circle, to try to insulate themselves from, people who may have ulterior motives. So I have witnessed some of that, sure.
In the end, though, it's a lifestyle that you've been doing for a while. Do you see yourself as you're encroaching 50 years old, hard to say that, hard to believe, but is it a lifestyle that you see starting to wind down now, or is it something that when it's in your blood, there's just no stopping because you've gone this far on the train and now you got to see where it ends? For
me personally, I don't know. I sort of lost my my appetite for doing those sorts of things and being in that scene a few years back. It's been kind of a slow unwind for me, probably for the last 10 years. Like I said, I never had a drug problem, or I never even touched drugs, and so I don't have any real desire to be out every night or around the scene every night. I appreciate different things, at this point in my life. I have a great interest, as you know, in writing and political writing and geopolitics and things like that. They've always been an interest of mine, but they're sort of dominating now. So while I still enjoy having a good time and going out, my girlfriend and I will catch a show occasionally, things like that. We have a good time, but I really don't. It's not something that I miss being around on the daily anymore. It's just it kind of gets old, believe it or not. While everybody else may be having a good time, it really can get exhausting, a little bit boring. So.
Well, I'll tell you right now, my friend, if Spaced Out Radio and Rebel Planet News ever blow up, we're going to have to restart that again. You realize that? Because I haven't experienced it, and I may need some of that love.
Well, I'm sure I don't think I'll ever forget how to have a good time. So if you want to make your way out to Vegas, or if I get up to Canada, we'll definitely make that happen. We're going to have to celebrate the launch of Rebel Planet News when it opens as well. So I think we got a party plan for that.
Exactly. When you throw that party, I'm going to bring some of the Spaced Out Radio posse down there with me, and we're going to do it right. And we want to be a part of that as well, because we're attaching ourselves together. We're going to make this one big, strong planet. Although Rebel Planet News is going to be different from Spaced Out Radio, we're going to come together every month to discuss new topics of the conspiratorial or what's happening in the world. So let's get to it, and let's start to figure out what the heck Rebel Planet News is, and how did you come up with this concept?
Well, Rebel Planet News is sort of ended up being the logical idea for me. I've been dabbling in political writing and geopolitics and kind of sitting out on the sidelines, just watching politics and not just politics, but geopolitics and not just what the mainstream news tells you, but doing my own research and really getting into the real history, things that you can't maybe just learn from the talking heads. For 25 years, it's been I wasn't just out rocking and rolling all the time and having a good time. In my free time, I've always had a great interest in those sort of things. So, I don't know. I've watched over the past 25 years. I really started, I started as a young adult, really paying attention to things that happen in the world. And not only what the things that happen, but the way that they're reported to us, the way that it's delivered to us. And I'm not just talking about news, but I'm talking about what the academia would consider actual history. And a lot of times the facts aren't what we're taught. And you develop a little bit of suspicion if you have the ability to think for yourself and not just listen to what you're told all the time, but let your own mind seek out facts and knowledge and do its own work. You can kind of, see that not only are we being led astray, but I think that we're often taking that for granted. We all have our lives and our daily lives and our daily routines and things that we need to do. So we just kind of take for granted, well, okay, this is what's happening in the world because this famous newscaster told me that at 9 p.m., And I think a lot of people just live their lives that way, and they take that for granted. I remember one time, it was a celebrity, actually, I won't name names, but we were riding around grocery shopping, of all things, Rockstar, and and we were talking about something, and I was, a little suspicious of a current event that was on the news, and I commented on it. And his reaction was, well, if what you're saying is true, why would Dan Rather tell us such and such? And it just, I thought, wow, because that is the logical conclusion that a lot of people make. Is if their trusted news anchor doesn't deliver the news to them, then they don't give it all the credence that they might, So I kind of feel like this term fake news is being thrown around quite a bit right now. And it didn't start with, believe it or not, it didn't start with Donald Trump calling CNN fake news. That was kind of a phrase he threw back at them. The term fake news kind of reared its head, within the past year with mainstream media and politicians directing their accusations towards alternative media, calling them fake news. And the irony of that is that a lot of times, I think if you really pay attention, most people know that a lot of times you actually get the truth from alternative media well before you get it from mainstream media. And in a lot of instances over the past several years, mainstream media has been forced to catch up in a lot of stories and a lot of narratives with alternative media. A lot of times alternative media will, because they're not beholden to the same corporate parents that the mainstream is, they're free to tell something as they see it. If they see something that's the truth and they report it as such, then it's out there just as much as it is any other news agency. But I think a lot of times the mainstream media will play it close to the vest. And in doing so, I think that they hold on to a lot of information, or they're afraid to report on certain things because it seems a little bit too far out on the fringes. So when it comes to Rebel Planet News, I'm really attracted to the idea of being able to research something and put it out there for the world to consider. And if Rebel Planet News can contribute to alternative media in a helpful way, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to tell stories in a factual way without being censored or filtered, and be beholden to some corporate parent. I think that information is very powerful, but misinformation can be just as powerful if it's not checked. And, so I think that we're misinformed quite a bit. So I think Rebel Planet News is an opportunity for me and the people that I'll be working with to explore stories with a little more freedom than what people are probably used to getting. So,
do you believe then that the mainstream media is bought and paid for, like so many seem to suspect on the alternative side, or do you think it's just lost its direction?
No, you and I probably haven't talked about that too much in depth. I know you come from a journalistic background. My feeling is that they are absolutely 100% corporate. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that they report on and all their facts are wrong. Certainly not. Of course not. And I do believe that there are a lot of people with integrity in mainstream media. But I've just, like I said, I've been studying this sort of thing. It's been a real big interest of mine for the past 25 years of my life. And I can tell you that even if it's a story that, let's say it's a story that makes national news, and which means that pretty much all the big networks are going to cover it across the board. And you can flip your remote and change the channel from one news channel to the next news channel to the next news channel. And it's almost like they're reading from the same script. And I believe not even almost. I believe they are actually reading from the same script, from channel to channel to channel. Now, each channel might have its own flavor, and I believe that there's reasons for that as well. For instance, if you were to listen to a more conservative agency, like say maybe Fox News versus CNN, they may both report on a story, the very same story, and may give you the same facts. In other words, for example, so-and-so's said this, or this happened, or that happened. The facts are the same, but it's the way they spin it that gives it its flavor per channel. But like I said, you can go from channel to channel to channel, and it's pretty much the narrative is the same. And you would say, well, of course, because the facts are the same. Yeah, but how come something can happen, and then 10 minutes later it's splattered over every news channel everywhere? You don't have all those feet on the ground that quick, you know. So I believe that there are some central news agencies that feed the other agencies, and so I don't believe that we all. I do believe that they spin their stories for their agenda, and I do believe that all of the stories that we're told, from the biggest ones to the smallest ones, I do believe get colored. And by colored, I mean that whatever news agency that you may be listening to, they're going to color that story with their own political bias, you know, the bias of their talking heads. They're going to spin that story in a particular direction, and sometimes it's just for flavor. In other words, a conservative agency may spin that story in a conservative direction, and then versus a liberal agency may spin that story in a more liberal direction. But sometimes it's even worse, and that's what really bothers me, is that sometimes things get reported, and I think that when they report it a certain way, in a certain fashion, you can almost just see the agenda that they have, the alternative agenda that they have in reporting the story the way that they do. So a lot of times you'll watch something that makes national news, like if it's a shooting or some other sort of tragedy, and you'll watch that story, and you're not really what you're seeing unfold in the narrative, the way they're telling you the news, is not just the facts. In other words, they're not saying at 9 p.m. so-and-so entered such and such and opened fire on such and such. You know, it's not just a factual thing. They add color. They'll have commentators on, they'll have guest speakers on, and they'll start to spin that story. And a lot of times, whether the story is legitimate or in some cases maybe not legitimate, let's say there's a conspiracy at play. You know, either or, it really doesn't matter whether the story is organic or manufactured. Any story can be spun by a particular news agency to further an agenda. And it happens on both sides of the aisle. It happens all over the map for various reasons. So, yeah, I do believe that for the most part, news agencies are a very, very corporate structure, and I think that they answer in a long chain of command. So anything that gets reported, like I said, small stories, big stories, they're all filtered through that chain of command and a chain of producers to deliver that message the way that organization wants to deliver that message. So, yeah.
At hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, Eric has a question, and Eric is asking, Jamie, why do you think that every 3 to 4 stories, every news channel repeats them daily, verbatim, or almost verbatim? The networks never seem to switch around the words.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. We were talking about a rock and roll lifestyle and all that exciting stuff. A lot of times, people, I'll have friends that would, come over and hang out with me, and and I'm just glued to the television, watching some boring documentary or the news, and they'll be like, "Well, hey man, I'm out of here," So I watch a lot of news. I watch a lot of news. I watch a lot of documentaries. I read a lot. And it's funny watching the news as what was his name, Chad, your viewer, Chad.
Eric.
Eric, his comment is on point. Sometimes I've caught agencies that are on both sides of the aisle reading the exact same words, and I'm hard pressed to think that that's not the same script. Most of the time, it's not the same script, but it's the same narrative. But they do that because it is an industry, and once you package a story, you only have so much time to get it's a product. Let's put it that way. Okay. So when an agency, outside of any other agenda that they may have, or color, or any of those other things we talked about, when a news agency delivers a story, it took a lot of work just to get that 5 minutes of FaceTime out to the public. If you've ever been backstage at a television studio or a news studio, there are hundreds of people at work. There are people at their desks, and there's people running around doing lights and makeup and sound and all sorts of different things going on. It's a busy operation. So while, as a viewer, you might sit at home and watch a particular personality in front of the camera delivering the news or the story to you, we kind of, in our minds, develop some sort of intimate sort of context for that. I'm going to sit down and watch, Bill O'Reilly, and I'm going to sit down and watch so-and-so. And, but we don't think about the hundreds of people behind the scenes that made those 5 minutes of commentary happen. So it's much easier for them, unless they need to change something, if there's some breaking change in the story or something, it's much easier for them to package that the way they packaged it and just deliver it, every half hour, every 2 hours, and run commercials around it. And then you can take just a little piece of narrative, just a small piece of what we call news. And, some of these news stations, they have segments. So they'll have, different hosts for the segment on. And when that host comes on, he's going to have a host of guests, maybe 2 or 3, 4 guests, maybe even a round table of guests. And they're going to talk and chew that story apart. And, you'll see this a lot of times when a story breaks, like the first day of a big story, maybe a tragedy or something. There's not a whole lot of facts in yet, You're waiting on authorities to give you a body count or to tell you the scope of the disaster or this or that or some other horrible fact that you might be waiting on. There may not be much actual meat on the bone as far as the story goes. But nevertheless, you're going to have, by the end of the news day, you're going to have 30 people on one channel chewing that story apart, weighing in on it, and giving their perspectives, and adding color and everything else. So it's much easier for them to, and they're very good at it. It's entertainment. In my opinion, news television and mainstream news agencies have become more about entertainment, although we don't necessarily view it in that context. If you really look at it, it really is entertaining. I mean, otherwise, why would we spend 30 minutes to an hour in front of a television watching news? They have to make it entertaining. They have to make it exciting. And not only that, but they have to get you invested. And that's what all the commentators are about. Because they'll bring someone on, you'll say, "Oh, this guy, screw this guy. I don't agree with this guy at all." Or you may say, maybe it's a guy that you do ideally line up with. So in that sense, it's entertainment television. It's not just reporting the facts. It's presenting in a way that they can take a very small scope of facts and just shred it apart and make it and exploit it for its entertainment value. So that's for and Eric brings up a good point. A lot of times, as if you're actually an invested citizen of your community, your state, your country, you know, and you want to know facts. You want to learn things. You kind of often wait for more. You want more. Of course, they always appeal to your passions by reeling you in that way, the way they do it. But when you really break down the factual part of the information that you get, it does seem repetitive. You know, you keep hearing the same things over and over and over. And, you know, a lot of times you'll get tired of hearing that story, and you'll tune it out, and then you'll be done with it. And I believe that that's something that in some cases, the higher-ups who have an agenda will actually use some of those organic things to their own advantage. In other words, they know that if they keep repeating the story a certain way, that you are going to get tired of it, and you're going to be uninvested, and you're not going to care. So, for example, if somebody wants a story to go away, if we'll talk in conspiratorial terms now, if there's a story out there that you know, the powers that be, as it were, if they wanted a story to go away, how do they do that? Do they hide it from the people? No. Hiding things from people makes inquisitive minds want to seek it out, so they'll dig for more. So what do? Instead of hiding it, you just overload it, and you hit it from every angle, and you get everybody arguing over it. You divide people up, and one side will pick one side of the issue, and then another side will pick another side of the issue, and within a few days to a few weeks, they've killed their own story, and nobody wants to hear about it anymore. So there's a science to it, in my opinion.
One of the things that disappoints me in looking at the U.S. media is how it's broken into factions. See, up here in Canada, yes, we have corporate news networks, but we still have a player called the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is publicly funded, that broadcasts a straight and narrow news line. You know, and when I look at Fox or I look at CNN or other news networks, it seems that they have to choose a political side, which really, to call themselves journalistic, is an oxymoron, because it's thrown right out the door the minute they choose a side on what they should be reporting on. Whether they're pro-Republican, pro-Democrat, pro-Libertarian, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, as a journalist, when I went to journalism school, you're supposed to stay down the middle. You are the eyes and ears, the police and the lawyers for the public. But when we have journalism and journalists and networks especially, or newspapers or radio stations choosing sides, to me, Jamie, that's where the danger is accrued by the public. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I think that there's, you know, it's an interesting dynamic. I think there's pros and cons to what you just described. Certainly, you would hope that anyone that's you would trust to give you information, especially important information that might be relevant to your life or people that you care about, you would hope that that information is being delivered to you with some code of ethics in mind, right? So, you know, in that sense, sure. The straight and narrow story, you know, fact A, fact B, fact C, certainly you want that. But at the same time, I don't want to sound hypocritical of myself, but although these shows do offer their color commentary, and they are divided up into segments, and I think there is a huge risk in that as far as cohesiveness. I think it in some way, even though I believe the news agencies do it for their own gain, and the powers that be above them, I think, do it for their own gain, I think there is some benefit to stirring one's passions to a degree. As long as you're not being truly manipulated, which I think that, unfortunately, these news agencies do that. But if it's just enough of a, I guess, a bias, an injection of bias, and that appeals to you, maybe it causes someone to get more invested into a story than they normally would. So there's the potential there. There is the potential to get people more active and involved in things if they're passionately interested in the story. Unfortunately, I think the agencies who deliver these stories go beyond that because they're fully aware that they can affect people passionately. So beyond doing it just enough to where it may appeal to one segment of the population or the other, or get people to sit around the water cooler at work and discuss news and debate things, which I think is healthy. They actually go a lot further than that and actually divide people because the biases are so contrast. So like I said, it's a mixed dynamic. I think I would get really, really bored with news if I didn't have my own ideals and my own passions about things that happen in the world. And we all do, and they vary. So, I don't know who's to say who makes the rules about how news should be delivered. I think at its very fundamental level, we should hear the facts without color, as they were. And we would hope that these news agencies didn't have a higher agenda right from the beginning. Unfortunately, I think that the potential that we have to gain something by letting everyone weigh in on a story, the manipulation has far outweighed that. We can have I used the hypothetical situation of a shooting earlier as a news story, right? Any shooting in America, or North America for that matter, can happen, and 15 minutes after the incident itself, people are drawing lines in the sand about where they stand on certain issues, and social media is blowing up, and memes are created, and one network is reporting this, and another one doing it this way, and it seems to be it seems that the news and how it's reported and the agencies that do it seem to be a vehicle to stir up chaos rather than a healthy vehicle nowadays. And I think true journalism that you were speaking of, just the ethical responsibility of reporting a story factually and accurately without bias, is obviously the more correct way to do it. But that gets boring for people, to be honest with you. People tune out boring news. So it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, and we only got about 2.5 minutes before we got to go to break here. Do you believe then that media has become very propagandist rather than telling it a story? What they're doing is they're using the propaganda of opinion to try and lure people's own personal opinions of what is right and what is wrong.
Absolutely, no question about it, and from their perspective, at least from the corporate's perspective, that's their sole function. I don't think that news agencies care what happens in the world. Meaning, what I mean by that is, whatever story comes across their desk daily, they can do something with it. They've got it down to a science. And I do believe that these agencies independently have their respective agendas and biases. So no matter what comes across their desk, like I said earlier, be a big story or a small story, they're probably going to spin it in a particular way to suit their agenda and their propaganda. But propaganda is nothing new. I mean, propaganda has been used since the dawn of man, That's really nothing new. But yeah, I do think that these agencies are very, very corrupt in that sense. I don't believe that even if you're, like I said from the beginning, even if you're getting the facts, you're getting so much color and so much bias and so much alternative agenda overtone with them that it's unfortunate in that respect, in my opinion.
It definitely is something that we all have to pay attention to, because in the end, Jamie, and I'm sure you agree with this, and you could comment on this on the other side, the public still needs the right to choose what is right, what is wrong. They need to be able to think for themselves whether or not the media or the government or the police or lawyers or journalists are telling the truth. They need to be getting back to the facts. Are we a long ways away from that? Probably so. And it's something that we don't know when, if ever, it can turn around again. And that's a sad part. It's a black eye on the entire field of journalism, and that's why so many people are turning to the alternative side of media, like Spaced Out Radio, like people are going to tune in. And I want every one of you, 140,000 strong, tuning in and checking out rebelplanetnews.com as well when it fires up in May or June, and we'll keep you in touch with that. You're listening to Space Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this break.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
The third Monday of every month, Spaced Out Radio is going to bring you a different look at everything paranormal. Welcome to The Reporters. Jim Mallard, Vanessa Hogel, Denise Garcia, and Christina George join me, Dave Scott, for a look at the weird and strange from the other side of the microphone. We'll break down ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and the people investigating them. The paranormal media has never been heard like this. Come listen to The Reporters.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Hey, this is Canadian paranormal investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night, we finish off the week strong. We're talking to former NASA employee Ken Johnson. We're going to talk about the Apollo missions, aliens, secret space program, all sorts of cover-ups tomorrow night starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. Thank you for spending your late night with us, especially if you're studying down in the colleges down there. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Ryan, for bringing us on board. We're also live on Joe Montaldo's United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us as well. We're live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio and on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Quadrage Sumerian. Quadrage Sumerian is your password. Quadridge Sumerian. Make sure you listen wisely, space travelers, because that is your password for tonight. Hey, if you're on social media, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio as well if you want to connect with me live during the show. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows on iTunes. We're also on TalkStream Live, Stitcher, and RadioGuide.fm. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can also head over to patreon.com. That's patreon.com. And you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radios for as little as $1 a month. So make sure you check that out today. Tonight we are talking to Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. At Rebel Planet News, if you want to follow him on Twitter, I highly suggest you do. He's about to launch one of the newest and best alternative media and news sources online at rebelplanetnews.com. That's going to be launching in May and June. Jamie is also going to be a brand new, as of tonight, monthly guest on Spaced Out Radio. So I want all of our listeners, all 140,000 of you, to just purge on Jamie's pages, on Facebook, on Twitter, on his website. Let him know what you think. Tell him you're there to support him. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. I like that password to Sumerian.
Oh, yes. Bill sets a password each and every night, and, you know, usually it's a tough one. So he tries to throw me off with some tongue twisters, but damn it, I think I got this one. I think I actually got this one this time. You know, so right before the break, we were talking about whether or not the media is causing a lot of this friction that we see in the public, a lot of the friction because they're not reporting the news or reporting their own opinions and trying to lean their opinions on you. And we both agree that that's not very healthy for the public who are viewing, listening, or reading. So in your opinion then, Jamie, whether it's alternative, whether it's local, where do people, in your opinion now, find the true news on what is actually happening out there?
Well, I think it's interesting how you preface that by saying that the news biases everything with their own opinion, and then you ask my opinion, which is fair. But I think for a large part, we're all human beings, and anytime we personally share information, we're probably going to color things our own way. I'm sure you do to some extent, and I'm sure to some extent Rebel Planet News will probably choose what stories we think are most important. But I think when you, with corporate agencies, what happens is they get so big that and there's so many links in the chain, it becomes this huge bureaucracy. And, you know, I think at that point in the game, a lot of your journalistic integrity kind of goes out the window, because you may be a lonely journalist at one of these big corporations with all the integrity and ethics in the world, wanting to deliver a story to people. But you don't have a snowball's chance in hell in doing that if your 20 bosses at the corporate agency want to tell the story a different way. So I still watch mainstream news. Because their resources are vast. I mean, they can afford to fly correspondents around the globe at a moment's notice. They have residential global, correspondents around the world who can be on any particular scene anywhere in the world and satellite up to them. So I don't discount mainstream news agencies entirely to the point where I won't even turn it on and watch it. I just sort of filter it with my own common sense. I don't necessarily allow them to filter in and get into my conscience and affect me in the way that a lot of people do. I've learned not to do that. I've learned a long time ago to divorce myself from as many biases as I can to be a free thinker. You know, the less labels that you wear, the more free you are to, you know, to discover yourself and to evolve and to learn more things. The minute you start wearing labels, you know, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm this, I'm that, you know, you put yourself into a box. And there are other people trying to put you in a box as well. So you kind of you have to use your own common sense and your own free will not to do that. Having said all of that, I think that we all have our own inherent instincts and our own inherent biases. So you just have to use the tools within you to think for yourself. And it's okay to pick a side, but don't just listen to a news agency and believe what they tell you verbatim. Because even outside the realm of conspiracy, even outside the realm of stories that we know have been mistold deliberately, accidents happen. I mean, there are a lot of times when you'll watch a story at 6 o'clock and you'll come back at 9 and watch the news, same news channel, and they've corrected something. Or the facts have changed. The body count's changed, or this or that. So, you know, I try not to be affected so heavily by information coming my way. For me, it's all food for thought. I want to know the facts, but I also want to be able to digest that with my own common sense. So I think we all have to be able to do that. The minute that you give up the ability to think for yourself, you kind of we're individually and collectively lost. And but you know, I mentioned earlier that you know we only have so many hours in the day, and a lot of people are very, very busy with their 3/8. You know, 8 hours of sleep if they're lucky enough to get that, 8 hours of work, and then another 8 hours divided up in there, going to and from work, picking up the kids from the babysitter, preparing for dinner, you know, and hopefully a little bit of time with your significant others. But, you know, there's just not enough hours in the day to digest all of the information that comes at you unless you diligently make it a point to do that. A lot of people are conditioned to believe what they're told by whatever news agency they have decided to attach themselves to, whatever label. As far as knowing, and I heard your guest, I believe it was last week, Burks was on, and I think you asked him the same question. How do you know? How do you know who to trust? I think common sense is a big factor, but also be able to recognize when you're being manipulated. And I think that's a big one. I think a lot of these stories are deliberately manipulated, to be honest with you. And you have to be able to recognize that when you're being manipulated.
Let's move on to a question from Gail here in the SOR Space Travelers Club. And Gail is asking Jamie, she says, personally, she hates the commentators and their opinions. Who cares what they think? And Jamie, do you think there will ever be a day again where news is reported as events that have occurred and opinions of newscasters are kept to themselves?
No, I don't. I think that we live in a Western society where everything is about entertainment. It's a formula that serves them well at an industry level, and I honestly don't see the clock being rewound the other way. You know, I guess there are methods and room for growth for the industry to become more responsible and lean more ethically, but that's going to have to happen through influence from the public. And to be honest with you, the public is pretty much abandoning mainstream media. That's why alternative media is doing so well, all forms of it. some of the ratings and things on alternative media are staggering. You know, people are turning to independent sources because independent sources, like I said in the beginning, are not really, they're not beholden to their corporate parents. And they're more responsible about what they report. Now, they may not necessarily have the resources all the time to get as much of the story, but I do feel like a lot of them feel more of a responsibility to get it more accurate. And that's what we're talking about, is accuracy. And I agree with Gail that who cares what the talking heads think? You know, they got their opinion, we have ours, right? So at the end of the day, she's on the right track. I think we all need to be able to think for ourselves. Unfortunately, too many people are conditioned to get emotionally affected by the debates that go on between one talking head versus another. So, you know, kudos to Gail for being an independent thinker and being able to, you know, divorce herself from that influence. I think we all should strive to do that and be more involved in our world. To me, it's an odd phenomenon to me that so many people seem to get so involved in stories and in news. You see it all over social media. And they have these, you know, you'll look on Facebook, for example, and there'll be these really passionate blogs and posts from people on their timelines and about a particular story. But if you ask them who the vice president is, they don't know. If you ask them more about the very story they're posting about, they don't really know the facts. Because people do not really take the time to investigate and explore things. They react emotionally to blurbs and sound bites and things that the mainstream media is feeding them. And so that's a big disservice to both to themselves and, you know, collectively as a people. You know, we gotta, if you really want to speak about something and you really want to intellectually spout off about something, you should probably do your homework and know all sides, not just the side that you feel you agree with, but explore the side you don't agree with. That way, by the time you offer up your opinion and you weigh in on something, you're doing it from an informed perspective. And then even if someone doesn't agree with you, as long as you're informed, it's still respectable. You know what I mean? We can all agree to disagree from time to time, but I would rather disagree with someone that has arrived at their position, you know, diligently, than disagree with an idiot because I can't even debate or have an intellectual discussion with someone who hasn't done their homework. So.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to a question from Trip here in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. Trip is asking, Jamie, what's your thoughts on reinstating the fairness doctrine to get news out of the entertainment business?
In what respect? What do you mean get it out? Did he expand on that? Or?
He's on about a 30-second delay, but I think what he means is, you know, we see, you know, stories being buried to tell us what Kim and Kanye are doing or what's happening with Miley Cyrus or something along those lines, really that doesn't affect people on their daily basis, you know, and trying to take away from the whole opinion aspect of, like you said, the talking heads that are giving an opinion rather than getting back to telling the story right down the middle as a good referee should.
Right. So when you say entertainment, are you talking about the entertainment value of news, or are you talking about the entertainment world being part of the news?
Well, we can actually take that both ways.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as, you know, entertainers, we all want to be entertained, and we all have our favorite entertainers, and it's our guilty pleasure from time to time to want to know what our favorite artists are doing, or, of course, I think those things, other than maybe a short blurb, if it's really relevant in news, should be left to programs like TMZ and, alternative media, in my opinion, that caters to the entertainment world. I don't think real news agencies, if they really have integrity and they really want to focus on things that are important in the world. I mean, listen, Congress is at work every day. The UN's at work every day. There's always some sort of global situation going on somewhere in the world that's more important than what Kanye's doing. So I would much rather that news agencies that consider themselves news agencies proper and want to maintain respect and integrity should probably not spend a lot of time worrying about what celebrities are doing. I think there are other agencies that are better suited for that. As far as the entertainment value of the news itself, I don't know that we're going to be able to separate that, to be honest with you. Like I said earlier, I think that it's become part of, unfortunately, it's become part of the process. These agencies are huge corporations, and what they do is a science. And, we haven't even really gotten into the more sinister elements of it, but just from a corporate perspective, just the way they do business, the way they package a story, the way they sell the story, the way they deliver the story. That's such a formula that works for them, and, it produces results. They get a lot of people stirred up and a lot of people invested, and they sell a lot of advertisements, and their ratings go through the roof. So whatever they're doing is working for them. It may not be working for us as a society, but as an agency, it's working great for them. And, the only real battle, because you're not going to get them, you're not going to be able to petition a corporation to change the way they do business. The only way that you're going to be able to affect them is if their numbers decrease because people are seeking out alternative means for information and their ratings actually go down. And they recognize that threat. Like I said earlier, that's why you hear terms like fake news being thrown about by mainstream agencies. And whether you like him or you don't like him, this is not a political statement, but I had to give it to Donald Trump when he started pointing at some very major players in the mainstream news agencies and calling them out for misreporting things, because they are capable, and whether on a deliberate day or an accidental day, of misreporting things. So I think that, while alternative media may not be a big enough dent in mainstream media right now to have mainstream media interject all the ethics and integrity we'd like back into their agencies, it is affecting them. They are starting to notice on a corporate level. It's hitting their pocketbook. Advertising dollars and things are, investing in alternative media as well. And people are beginning to trust alternative news sources because, stories will bear out in time that an alternative news agency will report something some way, and the mainstream is actually following them in some cases. So they're getting their credibility. I think that as independent and alternative news agencies, we need to be responsible to maintain that level of trust with the public. And in time, we can make a dent. But as far as, some sweeping change in the corporate news industry, I don't see it. I think that's a long way off, to be honest with you.
A follow-up on that question from Tripp, because they're on a 30-second delay in the chat room. He says, I'm trying to get stories factual instead of guessing. And that's what he means by the media. He would like to hear more facts and real figures rather than, trying to be that first to break it, because everybody wants in the media to be that breaking news station. They want to be the first to have it, and they don't care if the facts are right or wrong. They're speculating on rumors, speculating. I remember when we had the attack on the Muslims up here in Canada in one of the mosques where 6 Muslims were killed. Immediately it was being reported that a Muslim gunman went in there yelling Allahu Akbar and gunning these people down. In reality, it was a pro-Christian white guy who got sick and tired of what was happening. So there is a big giant balloon that needs to be popped, Jamie, when we need people to be able to report the facts rather than the speculation on what may or may not cause people fear.
Right. Well, I think that goes to my point. I think that accuracy is also another casualty of the corporate structure. They want to be the first, because why? Getting the first means you everybody's tuning into you. There have been instances in the world where, let's take election night, for example. That's a good example. Everybody's waiting for the final result. And I remember being at an election party and someone saying, well, they're reporting it's called. They called it. They're reporting they called it. And, you're on the wrong channel. And, so there is a sense of competition among these agencies to be first and to be the first out. It's well known that the first to deliver is, they're going to get a ratings boost out of that. So that's a corporate structure. And like I say, accuracy becomes the casualty anytime you're hastily trying to get something out. But some of these things are just organic failures of information. They're always going to be part of things. But when it becomes part of the way of doing business, to purposely inaccurately tell information, or even worse, omit information, that's when I get affected by it. I misreporting something accidentally or in haste, that's tragic. But I can understand that with everybody trying to beat each other to punchline for ratings. I don't think it's a good thing, but that's somewhat forgivable as long as they correct it. What really gets me is when something's deliberately misreported or only half the information, or if stories are invented. That's much more sinister, in my opinion. And those are the things that really affect me and have left a bad taste in my mouth over the years with different news agencies, is that they will knowingly misreport things or report things in such a way to suit a bias or an agenda. And that's really tragic.
One of the problems that a lot of people are starting to have with the alternative media, as we focus on what you're doing with Rebel Planet News and starting that up, Jamie, is it seems like the alternative had a great ability to take over, to be that trustworthy news source that people were yearning for and craving. However, over the last couple of years, we've seen the alternative start to shift from being a storyteller and reporting the facts to getting more into fear-mongering and scaring people. And to me, that's just as bad as what the mainstream is doing. And I feel sorry for the public now, because in the end, they don't have any source that they can trust. Do you believe that this is happening on the alternative side now because people are seeing, and corporations are seeing, there's money to be made on the alternative side? So how can we take advantage of that and exploit that?
I agree with you to some extent. Obviously, there are certain alternative media sources that do that more than others, and they do it in their own flavor. However, I can't really acknowledge that without also acknowledging the fact that mainstream media has been doing that since inception. We know that certain things in the world have been manufactured, wars, crisis, other things, and mainstream news agencies have exploited that. And they've done so a lot of times by direction from governmental agencies and things like that. We know these things. So, while we'll look at like, you draw a good point. Alternative media does have the freedom because of the internet to kind of do over, clean the slate and offer people a different way of getting accurate information. I think the people that fearmonger, as you call it, in the alternative media, especially if they do it consistently, probably arrived at that style of reporting because it worked for them. And you can either choose to listen to that or not listen to it. And most people will get turned off to anything negative after a while. If you identify it as if you identify a source of journalism or a particular website or commentator as a fearmonger, you're probably not going to give them much credence and listen to them, for very long. If you're a rational person, if you're easily influenced, you may start digging yourself a bunker and stacking up on dry foods. There's a lot of that in the world. But on the other hand, I think that we do live in a world where there are a lot of possibilities, and some of them are potentially sinister. And I don't think it's necessarily irresponsible to consider the what ifs in the world. When you start presenting something as inevitable, like the government's going to take us over, or this country's going to invade, you don't really have facts to back that up. You know what I mean? So when you start presenting stuff with such alarming inevitability, I think what happens is that you sort of lose your credibility. So I agree with you on that. I don't tune those people out as readily as some other people do, because I feel like a lot of time, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, especially about certain personalities. I don't necessarily dismiss them because I discount a lot of the color. I don't allow people's personality to affect me. If I'm listening to a certain commentator and he's shouting at the microphone and he's fear-mongering and all this and that, if he doesn't have anything to offer me that day, or I don't feel like I can learn anything from it, I'll turn it off, sure. But if there is something interesting worth listening to, I'm not going to turn them off personally just because of their abrasive personality. Because I would rather hear something that I'm not going to get on mainstream media from someone like that, as long as there's some truth in it. It's unfortunate that some people do choose to take that route and fearmonger and report things as fact when they're only speculating, and they alarm people for, their message is so alarming that, if you buy into it, you're surely to be labeled. You know what I mean? So I think you have to use your own discretion. I do think it's unfortunate that a lot of people let their personality, and I think you talked to your guest last week about ego. I think that plays a big part of it as well.
So this leads to Gail's question then. She's saying, Jamie, from where will you be getting the news you will report on Rebel Planet News? And how will you then validate the stories?
Well, validating a story is something that's done as the story is presented. In other words, if the story is a Rebel Planet news story from one of my agents or one of my sources, then that is on me to fact check. And there's a system as a journalist, you know, that there's certain systems and checks and balances you can take to do your best to make sure that the information that you're getting is accurate. There's always a risk that you're not going to get all of the facts 100% correct all the time. And everybody's at risk for getting it wrong some of the time. But I think that there's a difference between, like I said earlier, accidentally getting something wrong and correcting something later, if need be, than deliberately reporting things and presenting things that you know are factually wrong. That's not a good thing. And that happens in alternative media, but it also happens in corporate media. You know, I think, you know, the interesting thing for me is that I actually feel like over the years, I've probably gotten more new information. In other words, information that I did not know before from alternative media rather than the mainstream media. I'm not really learning anything new from mainstream media. So when you explore alternative media, it will sometimes introduce you to facts and things that, and it's not just media, it's just the internet in general, forums and chat rooms and historians and other contributors who blog, who introduce you to historical facts and things that maybe you were never taught in school, or maybe you didn't learn on PBS, or you didn't learn from the mainstream media. So I think that alternative media does obviously have a responsibility, as Gail suggests, to get things accurate. Anybody who presents themselves as a place for information should all try to get the information accurate. We have an ethical responsibility to do so. But you should also try to do so with as little color as possible, so that you're not trying to manipulate and dictate what other people are thinking. You want people to allow people to think for themselves. So that's kind of where we're going. And you know, accuracy is just something that you do, you know, with each individual story, depending on your sources, depending on who's feeding you the information. There's a set of, you know, checks and balances that you use to make sure your story is accurate.
How important is it to work those sources, and those sources making sure that the information they are getting is not disinformation? Because it is known in the media, Jamie, whether it's alternative or mainstream, a lot of times news outlets will report on disinformation just to keep the source going, because they want to keep that open line of communication in check.
Well, yeah, that's just one of those precarious things, isn't it? I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a source, especially if you're a news agency, you're not looking to just, you know, tell one story today. You know, you've now presented yourself as a source for information. So if you have sources that you use repetitively, of course, you know, you want to build up some level of trust with them. And that's, you know, like any other professional relationship. It takes time on both sides of the equation to have some integrity in that, and know that, you know, your sources are telling you what they believe to be accurate. And then as you pass that on, you pass that on accurately. So it's important to groom sources, and that's that's always been a part of journalism, alternative or mainstream. Nothing new there.
The one thing that I was always, and I was a sports reporter, Jamie, back when I was on mainstream radio. And one of the things that I always tried to do is to make sure that, A, my sources were vetted, and number two, take care of them as much as possible. Because the minute you take care of them and they're able to build that trust with you, they'll give you anything that you need. And basically it's like, okay, what kind of ice cream do you want today? That's about as easy as it can be. And especially, even if you are not, using them for a story, it's maybe tipping them off to something that they don't know. And it really is building some sort of relationship. It's not just, oh, you're in Vegas, well, let me buy you dinner. Or you're in British Columbia, let me come down and meet you for a beer. It's not like that at all. It's about painstaking phone calls that can take months, if not years, to build up that trust. So that way, when the person is giving you the quality journalism that you're going to write and the quality information for it, or whether or not you are going to be, having to take out that information and throw it with yesterday's garbage because that's all it's really worth when it's validated.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with you 100%. I think that those relationships are built up over time, and, you have to develop an instinct for that as well. If you feel like, the person that's feeding you the information has an agenda, you have to consider that as well, especially when you're dealing in the political realm. If I hypothetically had a certain source in Congress and they were giving me information that I could report, I have to consider their bias. You know what I mean? I have to consider that as well. So there's a lot of considerations in passing information from one hand to another. It's a huge responsibility if you want to be trusted in that. And I just feel like alternative media really has, as you stated earlier, really has a chance to do that if they look at it as such. If they look at it as just a free-for-all to do whatever they want to do, then they're going to lose their trust. They're going to lose trust with people, and in time, then they'll be disregarded, and probably a lot quicker than a corporate agency would. A corporate agency can misreport something and get away with it because they have the funding to do so. But the little guys, they kind of got to get it right, and I like that. I like that fact, because the stakes are higher for them.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think then of a guy like Alex Jones?
Well, I like Alex Jones. I really do. I've listened to Alex for a lot of years, and I've watched him grow. I've watched his agency grow. We talked earlier about personality. Sometimes getting in the way of things. And someone like Alex readily admits that a lot of times his personality will interject itself into, what he does. A lot of people find Alex extremely abrasive. They can't listen to him because he shouts too much or because of his flavor or this or that or the other thing. But and you and I have talked about this a little bit. My feeling with someone like Alex is that he's a pioneer. He was doing that long before I had any idea of doing Rebel Planet News, and probably long before you had an idea of doing Spaced Out Radio, and hundreds of other independent and alternative sources. He was one of the first to really make it his life's work to explore things in an alternative way. So I have to give Alex a huge amount of credit for doing that. He did that against a lot of enemies and still does. So, while some people may discount his personality or his flavor and sometimes even his tactics, which I know you've touched on from time to time, I tend to look past that for what I get from him and what I get from InfoWars and other sources like his. I think that Drudge is another one. WikiLeaks is another one. These people really, really go out on a limb. Some of them to the point where they risk, criminal indictment and things like that, just to tell stories that you're not going to get and get information that you're not going to get from mainstream. So while someone like Alex may turn certain people off because of their personality or because of certain tactics, this, that, and the other thing, I tend to overlook that. I think on balance, people who have given that much to alternative media and really given their life to explore things and go out on a limb, you got to give them credit. Even when you disagree with a particular story or a particular bias or the personality. So, like I said earlier, I've kind of conditioned myself to look past a lot of that sort of thing. If my criteria for who I decided to get information from in the world was dictated by whether I liked that person or not, or I liked their personality, or I liked this, that, I probably wouldn't get any information. I don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One of the things that I have a real beef about Alex, and I think he is brilliant at what he does. Let's be honest. I mean, let's make sure that, we do give credit where credit is due. He has developed something that is phenomenal for people who are just not trusting of the mainstream. However, this is where, and I'll give you a couple of examples, Jamie, where I don't appreciate what he's doing, and I think he is inciting a lot of what we expect in the mainstream. Okay, number one, let's go back to the Super Bowl in 2016, where he came out on social media saying InfoWars has learned who is going to be winning this weekend's Super Bowl. And we'll have it live in a couple of hours on our Facebook page. Make sure you join me. And then he gives, a couple hours later, gives his big build-up speech and says, the winner of this year's Super Bowl is, and then he gives that lengthy, pregnant pause, the owners and the advertisers. That's not breaking news. What you're doing is you're inciting fear that something that people are very passionate about, okay, is rigged. Number two is during the election, we all know that he's extremely pro-Trump, and him and Trump have a backyard relationship that each of them touch on every now and again. But when he sends himself or his, what he calls reporters, going out and inciting people during the protests or inciting people to get in arguments and or some sort of altercation physically or verbally on camera, I think that's dangerous. That's not reporting. Inciting is not the job of the media. And when we have someone of his stature trying to do this, even when he crashed the Young Turks event during the convention, okay, to me, it makes the alternative media look extremely Bush League, like we're playing minor league baseball against the corporations whom we're supposed to be challenging for who has the right story. And I got a real beef with that. And that's my opinion. So I'm wondering on your thoughts on this then. Is that journalism? Is that today's journalism where we incite people? Or is that going against what the alternative is supposed to stand for?
Well, I don't know. That's a pretty heavy question, but let's take the Super Bowl scenario for example. I didn't catch that, but I believe we talked about this before. While that might be misleading in some context, I think that would be one of those things that I would discount as saying, well, it was an unpolished teaser. In other words, you know, his point was to say at the end of the story, his point is to tell you that the game is rigged on a corporate level. Maybe not the game itself, but the presentation, blah blah blah. I don't want to speak for Alex, and I'm not disagreeing with you that there's not some misleading quality to that. But you know, I wouldn't pick Alex apart for something like that. I also don't necessarily agree with you that he sends his reporters out to be insightful. A lot of the things that I've seen is that they are confrontational. They're not just a microphone standing out in front of a place. But you have to understand, too, that I've seen time and time and time again where one of his reporters, because he is an alternative news agency, a presenter of information, one of his guys will go out and he'll have the microphone and it's, he's got a mic wrap.
I hope Jamie's battery didn't die. Let's see. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to call Jamie right back because I know he's on his cell phone, and I hope his battery just didn't die on us because we do have a good connection. We do have everything going, and you notice the show hasn't broken down tonight. We had to expect something happening. I'm going to call Jamie right back here, so give me 2 seconds. Maybe he's plugging in his phone, and we'll call Jamie right back. I think Jamie's point on alternative media, I mean, we can agree to disagree on the whole idea of alternative journalism, but I do believe that he does have a point, that the alternative side does have the responsibility to try and connect with some sort of problem that is happening. Jamie, are you there? Weird. Jamie, I'm not hearing you whatsoever, and we're about 4 minutes to go from the break. I'm going to try and figure this out right in just a couple of seconds here. This is weird, man. This is weird. Maybe it's the gnomes who don't like the alternative media. You never know with what it is because it's one of those things when it comes to talking about the alternative media side. Okay, when it comes to talking about the alternative media side, we got to get it going here somehow. Let's try getting Jamie in here now. Jamie, how you doing?
Sorry about that. I think I got disconnected.
Let me guess. Your iPhone ran out of power.
It happens all the time.
Well, you're a busy guy. I knew for a fact that it wasn't the alternative media clone shutting us down on this. I absolutely knew that.
Not this time.
Not this time. Exactly. We got a couple minutes before we got to go to break here, Jamie. And so one of the things that we were talking about right before the break is we were kind of having a really good conversation whether or not, Alex Jones was inciting anything during the campaigns leading up to the election. I'll agree to disagree with you on that, my friend. Yes, you don't want the people going in there with just holding the microphones and shutting up and being absolutely, faceless behind the microphone. But going up and taunting people, that's where it gets dangerous.
There's always a possibility that you've seen some things I haven't seen as well. So, I don't want to speak to that. But, I know that certain organizations have their style of doing things, and while I, like you, may not agree necessarily with their style or tactics all the time, sometimes I think the greater good comes out in the wash. Can that be corrected or improved upon? Absolutely. But then I think that's when you got to kind of do it yourself. If you think that Alex isn't necessarily doing things the way that you want to do them, do them a different way. Obviously I'm starting my agency, so I think that there's a void there that I need to fill. So, if I was getting everything I needed from the other agencies, I wouldn't do this. So, I feel like, we have to kind of have some margin of forgiveness for people's personalities and hope that they will improve upon their tactics in time, as long as they're giving us something good,
Absolutely, and
that's why.
Go ahead, bud. We got about 20 seconds.
I just say that's where I come from. I think that as sources of alternative media, sure, we all have a responsibility to do it the right way. But at the same time, we're kind of in a fight with mainstream, and I think that we need to kind of prop each other up where we can in that respect.
I would fully agree with you on that, and that's something that we have to watch out for, whether we're on the alternative side, whether we are on the mainstream side of the media, because in the end, whether it's alternative, whether it's mainstream, the media does have the responsibility to take care of its public. You are listening to Spaced Out Radio. Our guest tonight, Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. That's rebelplanetnews.com. On Twitter, at Rebel Planet News. I want you to go find those two links. And on Facebook, like his page, Rebel Planet News as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this break.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along with us. Shar, about time you showed up in the chat room. You're late, lady. You are late. We'll forgive you this time. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going to get into the conspiracy realm of what NASA is hiding. Former Apollo member Ken Johnson is going to join us, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, at spaceoutradio.com. We're live right now on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. We thank the Walking Dead crew for walking us through tonight. Hope you're enjoying tonight's show. We're also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us on a nightly basis. We love being live in Sin City on Renegade Talk Radio, and we're live on Revolution Radio. Remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight, the SOR Space Travelers Club. Quadridge Sumerian. Quadridge Sumerian is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, because he sets a password each and every night. Jeff, I'm still waiting for a definition of what that is. Let's move on to our social media. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. PJ, thank you so much for being a first-time listener tonight at Spaced Out Radio, at the hashtag Spaced Out Radio as well. Appreciate you taking the time to give us an opportunity. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on TalkStream Live, RadioGuide.fm, and on Stitcher. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the Spaced Out Radio SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can also head on over to patreon.com and become one of the Spaced Out Radio patrons for as little as $1 a month. Check us out, help us grow, and have some fun and get some swag while you're doing that. Tonight we are talking with Jamie Sexton. He is the owner of the brand new alternative media site called Rebel Planet News. You can follow him on Twitter at Rebel Planet News, Facebook page Rebel Planet News as well, and it will be officially launching in May or June. Jamie, though, is going to be a brand new contributor monthly on this show. His next appearance will be Thursday, April 20th. He'll come on the third Thursday of every month. Jamie, welcome back.
Thank you, buddy.
Really enjoying tonight's program. I want to get to a couple questions in regards to, right before the break, we were discussing the alternative media, more so InfoWars and Alex Jones, and I know you're an Alex Jones fan. This question comes from Michael, and he is asking, Jamie, do you think there might be an actual CIA connection with Alex Jones?
No, I don't believe that. You mean, in other words, Alex being in league with some, the CIA, like,
yes,
a Trojan horse, if you will? No. No, I don't believe that at all. I know a lot of people very close to Alex. Alex is from Austin, which is very near where I come from, and we share a lot of the same friends, and no, I don't believe that at all.
All right. Let's move on to another question here. This one comes from Everett. And Everett is asking, if Alex Jones, Jamie, is going to be misleading with topics like the Super Bowl, how can a person trust him to not be misleading with other stories?
Well, I think that's what I was talking about earlier. Is you're going to have to discern what is, and like I said earlier, I didn't catch the whole Super Bowl thing you were referring to, and I would say that's misleading. Certainly not, but I also think it's a teaser. It's probably done not as responsibly as he should have done it. And I can see where people would be misled by something like that. So I wouldn't excuse a tactic like that. But, that's style as far as I'm concerned. If you're saying, I got a secret. There are other things that bother me about, I don't want to make this about Alex, obviously. Like I said, I do like him. But there are things about his tactics that I think I would do differently. So a lot of things that come up daily. But it's his organization, it's his way of doing things. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier. You have to follow your own instincts. If you feel like someone is misleading you, even Alex, then don't follow them. But if it's a matter of personality, or if it's a matter of tactics and things like that's a far cry from the things that the mainstream does. And that's why I say that I discount a lot of the personality when it comes to alternative media. When it comes to mainstream media, they've been guilty of giving you news, like actual news, misrepresenting the news. Now, Alex, in your scenario where you say that he came on later and said that, well, the winners of the Super Bowl are the corporate or the owners and the networks. Well, I mean, he misled you for what, an hour, 2 hours? I don't know how. Like I said, I didn't hear it. But then at the end, he tells you what it was about. And that may be, in a journalistic sense, that may be an important forte. He probably shouldn't have built people up that way. But he wasn't coming out telling you a story, giving you false news. He didn't come out and tell you that such and such country invaded this country, therefore we need to go to war, or giving you substantial news, false news. And I think that when people do that's where the real tragedy comes in. That's why I said earlier, I don't get too hung up, especially when it comes to alternative media, on tactics and personality necessarily, because a lot of times these operations are scarcely funded. They're one-man shows, or they're trying to operate their own operations on a limited budget, limited resources. So a lot of times they do the best they can, and I wouldn't give anybody a pass for anything that they did that was unethical. But I think that I have to choose my battles, and if I'm really going to be hard on somebody, it's not going to be because of something like that. It would be because they told me that that we went to war for a specific reason, and that turned out to be a lie, which we know that mainstream media has reported, and we know that the government has done to us. So those mountains are a lot steeper for me than any others.
By the way, Gail has just checked out your website, and she wanted me to pass along saying your website looks really, really good. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. Yeah, we're coming along with it. A lot of work behind the scenes. Not much there to look at now, but there is a newsletter form that if people visit, I'd like for them to sign up. So when we are going, we can let everybody know that we're up and running. Thank you, Gail.
I want to switch topics here because one of the things that we talked about a year ago that has always intrigued me is the way that whether the movie stars, whether rock stars, or any sort of artist always seems to be able to get into this alternative side where they find out information that wouldn't be so much news to a government official or to the public. We're talking top secret type stuff. And I first got tipped off to this, Jamie, a couple of years ago when I interviewed Jordan Maxwell on this show. And he was telling me, like, everybody from movie stars to rapper will.i.am and other people coming up to him and asking him all of this information and telling them what they know. And then I looked at it again, and this is when we talked about it about a year ago, when Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 all of a sudden started getting really deep into the field of ufology because somebody at some party had told him something that was just blew his mind. Why is it that all of these artists tend to have some sort of information given to them where all of a sudden they are pulled into this alternative reality of what is truly happening on this planet?
Well, I don't know. I I guess it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think on the one hand, they're probably not all that much different from other people who may happen to know someone in the know. We just may hear about it more because we watch those people. So when they say something about the weather or UFOs or anything else that may interest them, we kind of take note of it. On the other hand, I think that people are attracted to and gravitate towards personality. So if you're a celebrity or a rock star or someone notable, I think that people want to talk. Secrets aren't forever, and everybody talks, and people like to share information, and there's a lot of whispers and things at parties and things like that, and if a celebrity asks you, so hey, tell me what's up with Area 51, who knows? An official might be a little more inclined to break code and share that with them more than they would the average bear. I don't necessarily know that the celebrity community knows anything on the whole more than the average bear, but I do know that information does tend to gravitate towards personality. In other words, people feel inclined to share information, perks, other things with celebrities. So a lot of times you will find that people have information that you wouldn't think they would have. A lot of times in certain situations, after a few drinks, people get to talking about things that they might not usually talk about in mixed company. So.
Well, let's put you in a hypothetical situation. Maybe this has happened to you. Maybe it hasn't. I don't know. But you've been to some of these parties. You have a couple of drinks. The guys are having a good time laughing. The ladies are all looking beautiful. And there's always that one guy in a suit that looks a little too prim and proper, yet he starts talking. What do you expect to do with that information when you get it? Because I guess what I'm saying is it takes a different breed of person not only to be an artist, but someone who can hold a secret as well. And does it tie in then to what we discussed in the first hour where, celebrities tend to have very tight-knit groups. Therefore, they can be trusted with information because they're not the type of people who wear their emotions on their sleeves, so to speak.
Well, I'd probably disagree with you with that last part. I think the artists definitely wear their emotions on their sleeve, but they don't necessarily always tell their secrets. But I would agree with the first part that a lot of times, in certain situations, information is whispered and shared, about things that interest you, and yeah, they probably feel like, if I tell this celebrity something, he's not going to run out and spew it. And a lot of times they won't. As far as that goes, I remember I used to do a lot of blogging when I first started writing, especially about geopolitics and politics. And, I would go out on a limb. I wasn't always politically correct. I'm still not. And a lot of times I'll just say it how I feel it. And it was interesting. I'd be backstage at a show, whether it be a local entertainer or a national entertainer. If they, happen to know me or be a friend, they'd come up and give me a wink and a nod and go, man, I read all your stuff. I really like your stuff. I'd like to comment on it. I'd like to like it, but yeah, I can't, and I'd have to say, well, I understand. Because they don't want to go out on a limb publicly. And I'm sure that with a lot of the stuff that you cover on your show, you probably run into the same thing where, a lot of these artists don't necessarily want to put themselves out on a limb. They'll talk to you all day about it in private, but they don't want it affecting their their career, their personality, or their image. They don't want to be labeled as someone who might believe in this or maybe something a little bit outside of the mainstream box. They don't want to be labeled. So, you run into that quite a bit.
So take a guy like Tom DeLonge. Yes, he made it very public that he had an interest in UFOs and aliens. He's made no secret about that through his music. But all of a sudden, the information starts coming through. How does that happen? Does it happen because he's popular? Does it happen because he has an interest in this? Or is it because he is popular, he has access to a different echelon of people where he can ask those questions too?
Well, I think that, that's kind of self-evident. I think if you have some fame or notoriety, people are going to gravitate towards you. And if you put yourself out there on any platform, whether, let's say that you're a famous actor and you all of a sudden discover a new diet and you go on a talk show and say, oh, I've discovered this new diet. The very next day, you're going to get bombarded with people who share the same thoughts on the diet. They want to know more about it. They want to, they want to talk about it. They want you to speak at their, at their health seminar. So yeah, I think that whenever you have whenever you're a notable personality, I think that does give you a platform for people to be attracted to. That's why they have celebrities endorse products. It's because they will overnight attract other people with similar interests, and they will expose other people to things that they necessarily hadn't considered before. And in a lot of cases, they'll lend credence to it. If someone, let's say, for example, believes in UFOs or has a certain perspective on that, but may not feel necessarily like they want to talk about it because they may get some sort of scrutiny, or maybe they believe in this particular government conspiracy or whatever. If a celebrity comes out and all of a sudden says that they believe the same thing, they may feel comfortable to identify with that. So I think that it's good in that respect. It's good to have to be able to feel like you have somewhere to share your ideas. And if a celebrity or someone notable isn't afraid to speak up on something, that's good. You know what I mean? It gets people talking.
So do you feel then, because there is some sort of trust, and in Tom DeLonge's situation, if we just focus on that, where he was actually given information by high-ranking military officials, I just don't see, or maybe I just don't understand, my friend, how, having a hit song or a very popular album that sells well over 1 million copies can lead to some government official coming up to you and saying, you know what, I really, really want to tell you about what's hiding in the mountains of Area 51.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's, there could be a couple of things at play there. Number one, maybe the person is a fan. And they just feel like that's a way to get close to them, is to share information that they can share with. And the other thing is, maybe they want to get that information out, and they feel like what I touched on in my previous comment was that that person could do that. They want to get it out there. They want to leak it. No secret is forever, like I said earlier, and that's, a lot of people that know things want to get it out. If they want to get it out, they want to get it out with somebody who can probably disseminate that information, somebody that people will trust. For some reason or another, a lot of people invest in celebrities. They sort of identify with them as if they know them or they're trustworthy, or we've all grown up watching television shows and certain entertainers that we feel like we have some sort of intimate connection with in some way. In other words, we're emotionally vested in that person. that personality. And whether it be real or false, we feel like there's a sense of camaraderie there, a sense of trust. And I've watched this guy perform for years. He's a great guy. Of course I'd share this with him, that kind of thing, that kind of dynamic. And I've seen that a lot. A lot of people will open up to you if you have that sort of personality. I've had people tell me things that they probably shouldn't have told me, just because they feel like they want to have a conversation, or, we're in the situation where it's, people just feel loose lipped. So it does happen. The motivation for it, I think, could come from a few different reasons.
So do you just think that maybe it's just straight talk over a beer or maybe a glass of wine? Or do you think that this is their way to kind of release what they know to someone who is of that public stature, so that way maybe it does leak out in a different sort of way?
Well, I think that, a lot of times people, like you mentioned, Tom, and I'm not familiar with, I know who he is, of course, but I'm not familiar with his interest in ufology and all that. But if that's his interest, he's going to make himself available for that. And once the ball starts rolling, he's going to get people who are interested in that topic coming to him from both sides, people in the know and then people that want to know from him. And then he kind of becomes a hub because he's put himself out there for that, and, we talked earlier in the first hour about people being attracted to celebrities and them having to insulate themselves and this and that and the other thing. And a lot of times, people are so starstruck with celebrities, they'll come up and they drop their glass, or they'll drop their camera, or they'll want to take a picture and they don't even realize their phone's dead, or they'll have it upside down, or, they fumble all over themselves because they don't know what to say. So sometimes any window or any door into a comfortable conversation with somebody who they're fascinated with is an avenue for them. So, if you happen to run into a celebrity who the week previous you saw on a talk show talking about a certain workout routine they have, or maybe they have a love for antique cars, maybe that's your opener. Hey man, I saw, you were on Oprah, and you're really into antique cars, man. So am I, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of openers, and but it's just kind of one of those things that builds inertia, where if somebody notable, somebody who's a personality, puts themselves out there as an available hub for something, you will attract people from both, people who are in the know of that topic, and then people who want to know. Kind of put yourself as an honorary spokesperson, if you will, in that.
Is that a fair place for a celebrity to be, though? Is that something that we need to endorse? Because let's say it's, I don't know, pick a name out there. Let's say it's Willie Nelson, or, whoever it may be, coming out and saying, by the way, so-and-so, I can't give up my source, but they're a high-level media source who says that the secret space program is real, and all these black triangles are American-made, flying us to Mars and Europe, from Europe to Mars, and all over the place within minutes, not hours or days. Like, I guess I'm having troubles realizing this, Jamie, that I just don't see how celebrities, find out this information and just hold on to it. Well, I don't, in the case of someone like Tom DeLonge, he's obviously not holding on to it because you're privy to it, and he's just not giving up his sources.
So yeah, I guess your question was, is that a fair place for a celebrity to be? I don't know. I mean, who am I to say? They put themselves in that situation. If they open themselves up to be that hub, that spokesperson, as it were, that's very true. That's their call. And whether people want to invest in that or follow them or believe them or trust in that goes back again to your criteria for trusting someone. I tend not to lend anyone credence just because they're a celebrity or a politician or a news anchor. And I don't necessarily discount them for such either, or because of their personality. I try to keep all of my biases very low so that I can not discount something because of raw skepticism. I wouldn't discount something because of a religious belief or because of a certain ethnic group I fall into or because of this or that. Once you start marrying yourself to to a league, or you start putting too much credence into one thing or another, you lose your sense of balance. And if you worship an idol, and you think that everything that comes out of their mouth is true and gospel, and everything they wear you've got to start wearing, that's not something that I've ever been inclined to do. I don't, most people do to some degree. But I think the less you do that, the more of an independent person you are, and the more of an independent thinker that you are. If somebody like Tom DeLonge puts himself out there as a hub for that or a spokesperson for that, whether or not that's a position that he should be in, I guess it's his call. How people invest in that is up to them. So,
do you think then that there's a possibility that he could be used as a distraction for disinformation?
Well, there are certain things like that happen in the world. I don't know how deep we want to get into this tonight, but I have my own theories about things that have happened in the world. For example, we don't necessarily have to get into it tonight, but I'm not, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there on a limb. I'm not necessarily convinced in my own mind that Obama and the birth certificate issue is settled. I followed that from the beginning, before most people even knew it was news. And I am certainly not satisfied, after a lot of investigation and a lot of scrutiny, that he was born in Hawaii. I think there's a lot of evidence, as far as I'm concerned, the overwhelming majority of evidence suggests that he wasn't. And if that's the case, that's very, very bad. But I remember when that whole issue came up, and that was, and this ties into what you had asked me with the misinformation being used. Obama was coming up on his second election, running for campaign to be reelected after serving for 3+ years already as president. And the birth certificate issue was not going away. It just wouldn't go away. It was becoming a real issue leading up to the second election. And the term birthers and all that started surfacing. Anybody that had any reasonable question about the fact that was he born in the U.S. or was he even eligible to run or be president came up again. They wanted that issue to go away. And who comes along but Donald Trump and becomes almost the hub, becomes the spokesperson for the birther issue. He was the guy. Donald Trump wanted to get to the bottom of it. And then all of a sudden, the White House releases, after 4+ years of saying that that they couldn't find it, they'd never be able to produce Obama's long-form birth certificate. It'd been lost probably in a fire, and the governor of Hawaii said that They vouched for the fact that he was born in Hawaii, and they even produced a certificate of live birth, which we all know is not a birth certificate. That's just the state of Hawaii saying, yes, he was. That's not necessarily proving there ever was a birth certificate. That's just the state of Hawaii saying that. But yet they never could produce one. After 4+ years of that, all of a sudden they found one. Oops, we found it. They found the long-form birth certificate, and they posted on the White House website, the official White House website, whitehouse.gov. And Donald Trump comes out with big fanfare and says, well, I'm satisfied. He produced a birth certificate, and I'm satisfied, and that's, that's the end of it. Of course, I'm going to give myself credit for bringing the story to the forefront. And, if it wasn't for me, he would have never been compelled to produce it in the first place. But now that he has it settled and let's move on, I'm not satisfied with that. To me, that I felt like we were being led out of town by the Pied Piper. Donald Trump all of a sudden becomes the celebrity spokesperson for the birther issue. They release what I consider to be a fake birth certificate on the White House website, and all of a sudden the issue officially marches out of town because Donald Trump's satisfied. So can people be used? I believe they can, and that's just one example, which I intend to cover on Rebel Planet News. We plan to dig into that pretty heavy until we get to the bottom of it. But yeah, I believe that people can be used, whether Tom DeLonge is being used or whether this is just an interest of his. I don't know. I can't speak for someone like that. But I do know that if something can work in theory, it's probably being exercised in reality. In other words, you put forth the question, can people be used like that? Well, if they can, they probably are, somewhere, somehow. If an idea is out there, it's probably being exercised somewhere.
So without naming names, because I always like to protect the source, have you ever had at, say, one of these parties that you've been at, or maybe watching a football game and someone shows up, have you ever had someone personally come up to you and say, hey, I need to talk to you about something that you may want to run with on your blog or on Rebel Planet News? And if so, how would you deal with that? Even before you started writing, you'd go out and get these people chatting with you. How open were they to discuss matters of, say, top security or black projects or something along those lines?
Well, I don't know if well, first of all, to answer your question, yes. I don't necessarily know if it's, in my case, if it would be necessarily because of my proximity to this, that, or the other thing. I just think that I was in the right place at the right time, and I do, again, I kind of make myself a hub because of my interest in seeking out information that's not necessarily readily available through mainstream sources. I make myself available for that, and like you sort of have with your radio show, you've made yourself available for that. So obviously people are going to now share information with you both ways. So yeah, I've definitely had my share of anonymous sources share things with me off the record. That I was grateful for that. A lot. Sometimes I was able to verify those things. Sometimes I was not. But over time, I learned, what to trust and what not, or if the information they gave me was accurate or not. But I do have those sources and those relationships in some cases with people who I do trust off the record, that I've known for a long time. And hopefully, as Rebel Planet builds, then we'll establish more of those relationships.
what about a lot of these celebrities being in touch with members of the Illuminati? Does that play into this?
Well, you and I haven't really gotten too much into that. My own personal belief, my position is that there really is no such thing as the Illuminati proper. If you know anything about the Illuminati, it was a very short-lived organization. And so I'm one of those who doesn't believe that the Illuminati proper even exists. Now, are there secret societies and powers that be? Absolutely. I believe that 100%. A lot of puppet masters in the world who are pulling strings one way or another. They do that through military means, government means, corporate means, financial means. They do it with an agenda. They do it without an agenda. Absolutely. But as far as the term Illuminati goes, I don't subscribe to that. And a lot of the artists that, use those symbolisms and things in their music videos and in their art and stuff like that, honestly speaking, a lot of that is window dressing, at least on their part, at least on the artist's part. There may be an alternative reason why you see that symbolism interjected into their art from some of their handlers. I've seen some evidence of that. In other words, if you watch a particular music video, and you see all this symbolism, obviously the artist knows when they're sitting in makeup and they sit there and they're going over the blocking and the staging and the choreography for their video. They obviously know what's going to be in their video. They know that. But they're not always the ones who design that. In fact, a lot of times, in most cases, they aren't the ones who did that. A lot of times, the artist will give a rough idea of what they want their video to be about or what their song is about. And these studios and these handlers and these producers are paid to put this together. And so a lot of times you'll see things that are snuck into their work, and then a lot of things, I think it comes from, there are three flavors of that, in my opinion. Sometimes they're just puppets. Sometimes you'll see symbolisms and things in their craft and their words and their art, even the chains they wear, things like that. And they really have no clue about what they're doing or what they're wearing or what. And then you'll have those that have some idea of it, but it really isn't their call. And then you have a very few, in my opinion, very few of these players in the entertainment business who are actually deliberately putting this symbolism in these things forward. But, I hear a lot of talk about Illuminati in Hollywood and Illuminati in music industry. And I got to be honest with you, man. On the one hand, yes, there is a lot of stuff at play. No doubt about that. And a lot of it is sinister, and there's a lot of underground influence and a lot of things in different areas of it. Not in all of it, but in some of it. But as far as the Illuminati, and when you see all these triangles and pyramids and things and all these different hand gestures, there are reasons why that's going on, but there isn't, in my opinion, from where I sit, just put it on the record, I see no evidence of any organization by the name of Illuminati dictating what's going on in that industry. I honestly see a lot of people thinking that it's fashionable to put that forth. It's almost like, I belong to a clique, the Illuminati. First of all, if the Illuminati, which existed, in 1776, if that organization, as it were to exist today by the same code that it existed then, you wouldn't know who was in that organization. They certainly wouldn't be wearing a T-shirt that told you that, and they wouldn't be wearing chains and making music videos flaunting that. That was never the premise of that organization. So it hasn't devolved into some sort of fashion trend. Yet that's what you see. So there's a lot of layers to that onion. So I don't want to dismiss the influence of certain things on the entertainment industry, at least in some arenas of it. But when you attach the word Illuminati to it, it's hokey, because that's really, it's not there. Not in the capacity that conspirators think that it is.
So what's your opinion then on the Rockefellers and Rothschilds?
Well, I believe, those are very corrupt families, historically corrupt. And I believe that through their financial means and political influence and power over decades has created this monster that we have, especially with the control of our money system. Anybody that controls the money of a society basically controls that society. And so when you talk about families like that and some of the corporate structures that are influential, yes, I do believe that there's a lot of puppet mastery going on, a lot of it. But again, when you attach, everybody wants to lump everything into one heading. And I think that's where it gets a little bit complicated. Everybody uses the term Illuminati for everything, and everything gets all put into one category. And it does, in my opinion, in my study of it over the years, it doesn't necessarily work that way. There are so many layers to the onion, and there's so many ways in which that power and influence filters down. It's not that concentrated, and it certainly doesn't have a header of Illuminati. I think that if you really want to get to the truth of it, you have to look at the way things are working, who's influencing who, and how are they doing it. If you just give something a name, some spooky name like Illuminati, and think every single thing happens behind one black curtain somewhere, then you're discounting all of the hundreds and thousands of nuances and influences that we get every day. And if you distance yourself from all of those little things that influence us, and you just look at the boogeyman behind the curtain, you're going to miss your opportunities to make change. You're going to think that you're not big enough to make a difference, when in fact we really are. We really are big enough to make a difference in the things that happen in our life. But when you attach all of your fears about all this influence to one spooky boogeyman or one rich man hiding in a castle somewhere far away that you can't touch, you feel disjointed from any influence. You feel like, well, I'll never be able to change that. And that's not necessarily true, because whatever came down the pipe can go back up the pipe. And we need to start realizing that. It's that this influence happens in subtle ways. And I do believe that artists and entertainers a lot of times are used in different ways to influence us, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. But when you see the artists start celebrating the symbolism and stuff, it gets real hokey, because in my opinion, that's more of for show. And at some point, it's sort of like some self-fulfilling thing. If so-and-so makes a video and it has some sort of symbology in it, and people look at that and they're like, "Oh my God, did you see the new video by so and so? It had all the pyramids in it and this and that." And like, "Oh yeah, man." Well, then the next guy is going to want to put that shit in his video. He's going to want to. They're going to want to do the same thing, and it becomes one of these things where it becomes like almost a fashion statement. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that there are legitimate influences on that industry. Like I said, it gets a little bit complicated. There's a lot of layers to the onion. So, those are things that I'd like to explore with you over time, but it's not, the answers aren't necessarily simple. And I think that in each case, it's different. Some celebrities are completely oblivious to what's going on around them. Some of them have a hand in it, and some of them are just acting. So,
do you think then that when it comes to the symbolism that we see, a lot of people take a look at Jay-Z and Beyonce as two of the celebrity types who seem to be bringing out these symbols, seem to be bringing out all of this type of political upheaval that they stand behind? Would you agree that there then are celebrities out there who are trying to influence the public into something that the public may not understand?
Yes, but then the question becomes, for their part of it, the question becomes, what's their motivation? Are they actually involved in something sinister, which they, seemingly represent? Or do they just realize that they're all of a sudden selling a crap load of albums and T-shirts with all these symbols on it? You know what I mean? Just because somebody alludes to the fact that they might belong to an organization, it seems to be working for them, whether they're involved in anything or not. So you've got to take that into consideration. As far as the actual influence on the public, I don't know. I guess that comes down to how influential you are. I've never watched a video or a movie or anything else and all of a sudden felt like, my life had changed. I'm not that influential on the quick. If you're gonna change my mind about something, it's gonna happen over time. You've got to persuade me that this is something that interests. I'm not going to be brainwashed. Some sort of by watching a program or a video or anything. So I don't know. I guess everyone's different. I tend to think, honestly, that a lot of what you see as far as this Illuminati stuff goes is overblown. It's become a fashion statement. Now, again, when I say that categorically because I think that specifically needs to be addressed. On the other hand, I don't want to discount the fact that there are some very manipulative, sinister elements at play, and artists and institutions and news agencies and celebrities are often used to further an agenda of some sort, whether it be political, financial, or otherwise. I mean, they do put themselves out there as a public spokesperson or as a public figure, so they put themselves out to be a vehicle for that. And oftentimes they will get used as that, knowingly or unknowingly. So in that respect, I think that there is a lot of sinister manipulation. And we can get into that, as time goes on. I'd like to. But generally speaking, I think we need to start really dissecting this thing and looking at it from less of a spooky way and more of a realistic way. And I kind of chuckle every time somebody says, "Oh, Jay-Z and Beyonce are Illuminati." I'm like, Really? I mean, I didn't know they were that old. It's a very old organization that only lasted 10 years and died out. So that's where I come from, with it, to be honest with you.
We only got about 3.5 minutes with you tonight, and this show has absolutely flown by, Jamie. But I do want to get into the hand symbols. We see a lot of hand symbols being used by celebrities. You know, they throw up a triangle in their concert. Everybody in their fan base is throwing up symbols as well. Do you believe then that these symbols that seem to mean so much in the alternative side, whether it's Illuminati, whether it's Bilderbergs, whether it's satanic ritual or anything like that, do you think that they are doing these signs because maybe A, they don't know what the signs actually mean and they're just trying to create some sort of following through a sign, or do you think there's something a little bit more sinister involved with that?
Well, I guess it depends on who in the equation we're looking at, and then there's a variety among them. In other words, if you're looking at an artist who's using that in their show, you know, they may have their own individual reason for doing that. Like I said earlier, it seems to be working for a lot of them. And if their fans are giving it back to them, well, then that's another form of exchange. You know what I mean? The fans do it maybe just to identify with the artist. The artist may be using it as a sales gimmick. Or maybe they subscribe to some sort of belief. But you know, symbols, you know, as far as humans go, they only mean what we want them to mean. A symbol only has the meaning that we give it. Same with language. Words only have the meaning that we give it. So, you know, I don't know. People always want to put things in this really dark arena, like symbols in themselves are going to, like, you know, spread like some sort of you know, fungus among us, and I don't necessarily believe that's. I think we should be smarter than that. I mean, you know what I mean. I think a lot of it is more gimmicky, at least in the entertainment context, than anything. Now, again, I want to stress, and I don't want to dismiss this, and I'd love to get into this more with you later about the real influence and sinister stuff and manipulating that goes on. But a lot of the symbols and stuff, they're just really hokey. And I think that the internet and alternative media and conspirators just really run with that stuff. And, you know, it's taken on a life of its own. And the artists, if they're making a buck off of it, they love it. All they got to do to keep that going is deny it. Just deny it. Just keep throwing the symbols and deny you're a part of anything. And you can milk it another 5 to 10 years. You know, the minute one of these guys comes out and says, "Oh yeah, I'm a part of that," well, then the game's over. Nobody gives a shit anymore.
My friend, we got about 30 seconds left with you. I want you to remind everybody where they can find you on social media and your website.
Great, thanks. Yeah, well, as we mentioned earlier, the rebelplanetnews.com will be officially launched late May or June, and but you can go there now and fill out the newsletter. That way I can let everybody know when we launch. And meanwhile, we just opened our social media on Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media. So just look for us and sign up, and we'll keep you informed. And then I'll see you again here on Spaced Out Radio next month. Yeah?
Absolutely. April 20th is when you will be back, Jamie Sexton, from Rebel Planet News. I'm going to get you to hold on for a couple of seconds. I got to wrap this thing up. If you're listening in on the Spaced Out Radio side, which includes the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, you know, when Bumblefoot's playing, it's time to start wrapping things up. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Remember, You can follow us on social media on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can download our shows and our archives on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, TuneIn, iTunes, RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. That's a mouthful, man. Tomorrow night on the show, we're talking the Apollo missions, we're talking aliens. Former NASA employee Ken Johnson is going to join us. We are going to rock this week out on a really good note. What a great show tonight. Thank you, Jamie Sexton from RebelPlanetNews.com. We're going to be doing a lot more with Jamie coming up in the future. So make sure you tune on in and you become a fan of Rebel Planet News. That's the way we're going to do it. I will talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now, because that's what we do. One more night before I head off into the wilderness to find my Zen and my Chi. I hope you join me. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.